Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here on the World War II Solitaire board game channel. Today we are doing a preview of Lone Sherman, a Solitaire Wargame by Mike Lambo. So if you are a fan of the M4 Sherman tank, well, it is a wonderful time to be alive because we got Lone Sherman here by Mike Lambo, we got American Tank Ace by Gregory Smith, and I also got a Patton's Best campaign going on my channel, so I think soon I have to just change my channel name to the M4 Sherman Tank board game channel, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at this game. We're gonna take a look at the rules, we're gonna take a look at each of the missions, and then I'm gonna show you a few turns just to give you an idea of how this game works. In the future, of course, there's gonna be playthrough videos and a proper review as well. So I think most of you guys know who Mike Lambo is. He has created quite a lot of games, as we can see here. I have the Fields of Normandy, which I have covered before, an awesome book game, but we have a bunch of more games, and not all of them are World War II. We have Ghosts of the Jungle, and we have the Medieval Britain, and so on, Battles of the English Civil War, and Hostage Rescue Team. So this is gonna be similar, I'm gonna say, to previous games, but it's also gonna be very different. So, but if you have played previous games, like at least the Fields of Normandy, you're gonna be familiar at least with the action sequence when you roll dice to see which actions you're gonna be able to take, because you're not gonna take actions like in American Tank Ace, Patton's Best, where you get to decide, but rather the dice will decide, and then you're gonna have to make the best out of it. Also here you can watch Mike play his games on his YouTube channel. You search for Mike Lambo Solitaire Book Games, or you can check the link in my video description. Mike has a great channel where he showcases all of his games, so I highly recommend that. Okay, so let's talk about the rules. I think Mike has done a really great job here. There's actually quite a lot of rules. We start here on the introduction on page 4, and the rules go all the way to page 25. So that is a total of 22 pages, I think it is, of rules, if my head math is working correctly. And to be honest, first when I saw the book and I saw all of these pages, I thought, ooh, man, did I get water over my head here? But no, I didn't. I can tell that after reading it, because in difference to many other games, I only had to read these 23 pages of rules once. After reading it once, I knew how to play the game and felt like I also had the rules in the back of my head. And that is for two reasons. First, the game does repeat its rules at each relevant sector, and then we also have a very laid out next to each mission reminder and charts for it all. And very rarely did I feel like I needed to go back and browse the rules thanks to all of these charts. And I have to say also, this was also looking a little bit intimidating to me, all of these charts, but once you understand it, it is really not that complicated. So I gotta say, I think Mike has done a very good job here with rules. Again, we have them laid out in a logical way, and then we have game examples, as you can see in these squares, and there's lots of game examples with color pictures. Here we have another game example, and again it keeps repeating important parts, like for example here we see the damage chart. It's shown a few times throughout the rules in relevant places, and I appreciate that, because to be honest, these rules could have been, another example, these rules could have been condensed into way fewer pages, but then it wouldn't get stuck in the same way as it currently does. Again, I read rules once and I felt like, okay, now I can play the game. Here we have it again, this damage chart, I think for a third time. I felt like I could play the game without having to read any of specific sections, because I just understood everything. So very good job on the rules. And I gotta say also, So, I mean, the rules are definitely war game, traditional war game inspired. You have line of sight and you have stuff like that. So this is I would call this a light game. And that's the really impressive part about the rules, that this is a light game, but it has parts of the rules are quite complex, but they are explained and played in a manner which make them non-complex. And I hope that makes sense to you. I know it's a little bit strange way of saying it. Remember, English is not my first language, but I'm trying to explain how I experience the rules. So, for example, let's talk about when you shoot at an enemy tank, or if you take fire from an enemy. So the first thing you check for is if you actually hit, and we're gonna speak further about that in more detail once we get going. And then when you check if you actually hit, then you have to check armor penetration. So this is actually done in quite a complex way, more complex than Patton's Best and American Tank Ace, which is very impressive, but it's done in a way that makes sense, so it doesn't feel abstracted, it doesn't feel like oh, how was that rule again? Because you will remember it since it seems logical. And that is also depending on the enemies and your tanks, different armor values, and of course they're going to have a different armor value depending on where you shoot at. So here we see, for example, on mission 1, we might face a Panzervier, or we will face a Panzervier, and we might face a Panzer III. And here are the first one is just the size, and the larger the tank, the easier they are to hit. And then we have the armor values. So this is the front side, side, and rear. So they have 4 different angles they could be shot from. And depending on where you shoot from, it's going to be easier or more difficult to penetrate the armor value. So I really appreciate that. I really do, because take, for example, you have seen me play a game which is similar, which is one-page World War II Tank Wars Ardennes. That is a very light game with very light rules, and you just roll to see if you hit and kill and damage all in one roll. Actually, to hit, to penetrate, to kill in one roll. Here you do it in 3 steps, but it feels logical. It feels... it brings on the theme of the game, and again, very impressively done, I have to say. So anyway, we have seen the rules here. Let's go ahead and look at the missions offered in this game. This game offers a total of 11 missions. So we have mission 1, the village, and we are going to play a little bit of that. Our mission here is to eliminate 2 Panzer IVs and escape the map. And then we have mission 2, which is Tiger Hunt. We have mission 3, which is eliminate the infantry. Mission 4, which is just passing through the lake. Mission 5, destroy the truck. Mission 6, damage and surrounded, 3 on 1. Mission 7, the bridge. Mission 8, the assassination. Mission 9, across the water. Mission 10, just passing through the town. And finally we have mission 11, which is Steel Gladiators. And like Mike explained in his video, it's kind of a arena, which is going to be pretty fun, and you can adjust it any way you please. Okay, in the end of the book here we have suggested counters, so you could either clip these out with a pair of scissors and mount them on some cardboard, or you could print this page out. You can find this page on Boardgame Geek forum in the file section of the game entry, in case you don't want a clip in your book. Some people might not be comfortable with that. I think I am going to go ahead and clip these out and put them on some cardboard. And then on the end we have just a description of the game. I'm going to show it here because you might be interested in reading it, and I feel like I have talked enough, so I'm not going to read all of this for you. If you want to read it, pause the video and read. And then we have a picture of Mike Lambo himself. Okay, so let's go ahead and play a few turns of of the first mission, which is called the Village, to give you an idea of how this game works. So first of all, we have our Sherman tank to place out, and the Sherman tank will be placed where we have the black arrow. It will be facing the direction of the black arrow. So you could use, for example, a cube, and then you could put the cube near the border which is facing. So if it's here, it's facing that direction. If it's over in here in that hex, it's facing that direction. You could also use a pencil and eraser, and you could paint it and just erase it. You could use miniatures, you could use counters. I'm gonna take the liberty here of using a counter which I got in American Tank Case, which is an M4 counter. Your tank commander will start buttoned up. So again, you could use a pencil, you could use a cube. I'm gonna go ahead and use again one of these awesome counters I got in American Tank Case. We are having some crew members here: loader, gunner, driver, assistant driver. Again, you could use a pencil, you could mark it. I'm gonna leave it unmarked, and in case one of them gets killed in action, I am gonna go ahead and just put a cube, or again, I could just go ahead and use one of these awesome markers, which I got from American Tank Case. Anyway, it really works, it's up to you. Now we have done our part of the setup. We faced the Sherman tank in the direction of the black arrow in this hex, and now we need to place out our two enemies. So the mission 1, the village, tells us which enemies will spawn. So objectives: destroy both Panzer IVs and then move off the map in the direction of the red arrow. Setup: place the Sherman on the black arrow hex facing the direction that our arrow is pointing. We have done that. Place 2 Panzer IV tanks randomly on different black numbered hexes facing the numbered edge. So these are these ones. You will notice that we have some hexes with red numbers in them, and those are going to be spawn areas for enemy infantry. Enemy infantry might come in the end of the turn events. Anyway, we are going to go ahead and get ourselves a dice tower here. See if I can adjust this book a little bit. And we are going to roll 2 dice for our Panzer IVs, and we rolled 2 6s, so I'm just going to go ahead and re-roll both of them. And we have a double 1, and we have a 1 and 3. You could, of course, just roll for them separately as well. And we have the first one is over here, and again, I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty of using these beautiful counters from American Tank Case. So they will now face the number which you see in the starting hex. So this Panzer IV is going to face this hex, and this Panzer IV is going to face this hex. So now we have done the setup, and now we are ready to play. And I am gonna explain all of this information here for you. I'm actually gonna see if I can put something up on the screen if it makes sense. But anyway, the sequence of play consists of a bunch of different steps. It consists of totally 7 steps. So let's briefly just discuss these steps. First, we have remove Sherman smoke, and that's not something you're going to do in the first turn because you will have no smoke. Then you decide if your commander, if you want to have him buttoned up, actually should be like that, buttoned up, or if you want him to have his hatch open. And after that, you decide your actions based on what you roll, based on what terrain you're on, and then you remove German smoke. And then step 5 is if the Sherman tank is on fire, you have to roll to see what damage you receive. Number 6 is German tank operations, and finally we have end of event turns. My apologies. He does start buttoned up. Okay, so let's just get to it. We'll start with first step, remove Sherman smoke. There is no smoke to remove. So we go to step 2 out of 7, position commander marked as buttoned up or popped hatch. So I'm going to go ahead and start with having his hatch open, and that is going to give me 1 additional die when rolling for my orders. It's going to give +1 when I do maneuver, attack, and also for the miscellaneous orders. So there is a downside to it, though, that For example, if there is infantry nearby, they can kill me with their sniper, so on. This stuff is going to be bad for me basically when we get to German tank operations and possibly in the end of turn events. But we'll see that when we get to that. So now we go to step 3, which is the fun part. This is when we get to issue our orders. So you have 3 parts of issuing your orders. You have the maneuver phase, attack phase, and lastly the miscellaneous phase. A really cool thing here is that we can choose which of the 2 first one that we want to start with. Do we want to start with the maneuver phase or with the attack phase? And then we always end with the miscellaneous phase. That is a really hard word, by the way, for a Swedish guy to pronounce. So my apologies if I'm slaughtering that word. I'm just going to call it a C phase from now on. We could potentially use the attack phase now, and we could attack the Panzer IV, which is up here. But the further away that you are, the less likely you are to actually hit his armor. So I am not gonna fire. I would, of course, like to fire on him from his rear, and his rear are currently this, and this side. So I would have to get up here to fire at his rear. This and this and this hex, all fire coming from there, will be at his front and side fronts armor. So anyway, I think currently I'm gonna take my chances and try to move up here and see if I can get a shot at him. When shooting, that's pretty straightforward, and we're gonna delve deeper into that once we get to it, but I just want to point out before, you see these 3 lines, they will basically make it, for each tree line in between me and the enemy tank, they will make it a little bit harder to hit, unless I am in the hex of that tree line. So for in this scenario here, this one would make it harder to hit, but not this one because I am in that hex. But if I am here, which I currently am, then we have 2 free lines, which will make it harder to hit that Panzer IV. So I am gonna start with the maneuver phase. I will not start by attacking. And so how do we know how many of these little dice that we get to roll? Well, this is based on, first of all, how many what kind of terrain you're on. So we have a bunch of different terrains, and for this specific scenario we have a total of, let's see, we have a road, which will give you 2 dice, which I'm currently on, and then we have a field, which would give you 1 die, and then we have mud, which is over here, that is going to give you 0 dice. And then we have more dice depending on our driver or assistant driver is still alive. Both of them are still alive, so the driver gives 1 die, and then the assistant driver gives another 1. And finally, if the commander is alive and has a popped hatch, you have a 5th and final die. So we have currently 5 die to roll. I'm going to bring this up on the screen now so you can see better what orders I will be able to issue. So I'm looking here to roll a 5 or a 6 or doubles because I want to move closer to that Panzer IV. And let's see what I rolled. I rolled at least 1 double. I can't see it. Okay, we have a 6. That's good. Whoops, that was a 2 before I messed it up. And a 3 and a 4. So you can resolve these orders in any manner that you want, and I'm gonna start with the 3. So the 3 will let me, as we can see on the chart, it will let me turn my tank. So I will pivot my tank facing that direction that I want to go, and now that die has been used up. Then I have a 6, which will let me move. So I'm moving 1 hex closer to that Panzer IV. Now that's been used up. Now I have 2 2s and a 4. All of those will only let me turn. I don't want to turn, so that's bad. But we have a double number, which is 2. And if your driver is alive, that will let you use the double to move 1 hex. If your assistant driver is alive, a double will also let you turn. Both my driver and assistant driver are alive, so I will use that double to move 1 hex closer to the Panzer IV. Now the 4 will let me turn, but I do not want to turn currently, so we're just going to discard that die. We're now done with the maneuver part of our orders phase, and we move on to the attack part. Again, we consult our terrain. We are not on a road, but we are currently on a field, which is 2 die. And then we have gunner and loader alive, which will give us 1 die each. And finally, our commander is operating with his popped hatch, which gives us a 5th die. So we now have 5 dice to roll. One thing to note here, one of my very few complaints about this game was that I found it a little bit strange that whatever terrain that you were on would affect how well you would operate the main gun or machine guns and so on loading. I spoke to Mike about it, and like I said to him, yes, I understand it is a game, and with a game there is always going to be a level of abstraction. And Mike just figured that, well, I mean, if you're on a field, it's going to be easier to operate the tank. If you are in mud, you will see here we only get 1 standard die, so that in that situation now, if we were in mud, we would have 4 instead of 5. And basically, you know, you might want to angle the tank a little bit, something like that. It's going to be harder to operate in mud. So that is the way he explains it. I buy it and I understand it. Now we're going to go ahead and roll our 5 dice. We want to roll as many 5s or 6s as possible, but note here, we have to roll at least a 1 or a 2 and or a double, because we're not loaded. And we still need to load our tank. We start unloaded. So let's roll these 5 and see what happens. And interesting roll. That's not gonna help me very much, I'm afraid. A 3, a 1. Okay, so the 3 ones is gonna help me. So first we roll the 1, and the 1 is going to let us load our tank. So again, use markers, whatever you want. And that has spent the 1. We have a 4, which is fired machine guns at adjacent infantry, but we have no infantry, so we're just going to go ahead and discard that directly. Then we have a double, which is a 3 and a 3, and that will let us fire the main gun if our gunner is alive. If our loader is alive, a double will also let us load. We are going to use that to fire, and I'm very happy that we actually get to fire, because I want to show you how this works. So the first thing you need to see when firing, we have our firing chart here. Target size plus distance away. So here we have our different enemy tanks that we can engage in this specific mission, and we have a Panzer IV. The Panzer's 4 size is 4. So the larger they are, the easier they are to hit. We can see the Panzer III has a size of 5. So what we need to roll is the size plus the distance, and we need to roll equal or higher. So we can see here that it is easier to hit a Panzer IV than a Panzer III, because the size number is lower on the Panzer IV. The distance is currently 1 hex away, so that means we have to roll 4 plus 1. So that is currently going to be a 5 or higher. And then we have some modifiers here. Each tree line, and we can see in it also says here not bordering attacker's hex, and this one is bordering our hex. We don't have to use that as the modifier. Target in building hex, target has smoke, target is hold down, target is behind the attacker. We do not have any of those, so that means our target now to roll is 5 or higher with 2d6, so we are very likely to be able to hit this Panzer IV. On a hit with a double, commander is killed in action if popped hatch, and that is if the enemy is firing at our tank. Let's roll and hope for a 5 or higher. We roll 3, so that means it does not hit the enemy tank. That's bad, my friends, but that is sometimes what happens. Did not count on that, but again, that is sometimes what happens. We still have our miscellaneous here order, and it works just like the other order phases. We have 2 dice because we're on a field, plus 1 dice if commander has, even if he's alive, plus 1 pop hatched or buttoned up. So we have a total of 3 dice. And we roll 3 5s. Okay, so cool thing here, we can see the 5s will let us smoke or repair, and a double one lets us hold down. So of course we're gonna pop smoke. We go ahead and pop some smoke here, and then we go ahead and hold down. And I currently don't have a marker for that, so I just use a brown wooden cube to note that we are hold down. And that is the end of our turn. That is the end of step 3 out of 7 on the sequence of play. Next is remove German smoke, and the German currently do not have any smoke. They cannot have smoke in the first turn. Step 5 out of 7 is if fire level is higher than 0, roll on Sherman what damage. So basically we can, if we are attacked, we can, the Sherman can become on fire, and it can have, several fire levels. It can increase and super dangerous, so you have to try to extinguish that fire, and you can do that here on the last order phase, and you can also do it on the end of turn events if you roll a 4. So we skip that 5 since we are not on fire, and that leaves us to a very dangerous one now, German tank operations. So roll stated dice per unit, all actions based on starting hex status. So this works very similar to how we use our tank and our orders. So I was hoping to at least damage this one, because that would mean he would only have 2 dice, but now he's on a field, he's undamaged, so he is gonna get 4 dice. You start with the enemy tank, which is closest to your tank, and you only roll for German tanks, you do not roll for any infantry. So we start with the Panzer IV and we roll 4 dice, and we roll a 1, a 3, a 3, and a 5, and you will resolve these from lowest to highest number. So the first one is fire or turn. They will always attempt to issue the first order, which is fire. If there was no line of sight now, he would not fire. Line of sight is unlimited in regard to range, but things can block line of sight. The things that can block line of sights are forests and buildings. So now he has line of sight, meaning he will fire on me. So basically the turret is turning into my direction, and we will do exactly what we did when I fired on him. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and roll now to see if he actually hits us. So it works just like it did when we fired upon him. So target size plus distance away. Our target size for the Sherman is 4, distance away is 1, so he needs a 5 or higher to hit. However, we are currently hold down and we have smoke, so that's a +1 for the smoke and a +2 for being hold down. So the total roll now that he needs to roll is 8 or higher. And we roll a 2, so I'm very happy to say that we are safe. However, that was just the first of his order. Now we go to his second order, which is 3. Again, we have fire first and then move. So again, he will attempt to hit us on a roll of 8 or higher. And this time he rolls 6, so it's still a miss. But we have another 3, so another attempt to hit us. And this time, see, he rolls 8, so he has managed to zero in. That means he now manages to hit us. So now that we are hit with his round, we are also gonna have to see if it actually penetrates. So we go ahead and look at our armor here, and he's facing the front, so we're gonna use the frontal armor value. The frontal armor value is 6 for Sherman tank. We will have to roll that minus his AP. So for Panzer IV, AP value is 1. So that means he will have to roll with a d6, a roll of 5 or higher. And he rolls a 6, so that's pretty bad. That means we have been hit. Wow, that's one lucky Panzer IV. So now we have to check the damage, and that's rather simple. You roll a d6, and we hope now to have a roll of 6 would be pretty good. We do not want a roll of 1, and that is actually what we get. We get a roll of 1, which means we have been destroyed and we have lost the game. So that was a really short game. Maybe I was a little bit too brave attacking that Panzer IV, but I don't see really any other way I could have done it, because I mean, I could have perhaps moved into the town or something. but to get behind him, I would have to expose myself to this guy. So yeah, I think I was just rather unlucky. One thing to note here also was that I think I might have forgotten to tell you about that the last action I did was to load my tank, because once you have fired, you become unloaded, of course, but I want to remember that I had 2 load actions. Anyway, that is the end of the game, but we are gonna go ahead and play it out just so you see how all of the different sequence of play works. And of course, we are gonna do a proper playthrough video of the missions of this game in the future. So let's say that I did survive that hit, that it bounced off, I was immobilized. Let's just say that I was immobilized. And guess what? I have some cool counters for that as well. So the last step now would actually be, and before we do that, we should actually roll for this guy. And he's also on a road, so he will get 4 dice. And let's see what he's rolled. He's rolled 2, 4, and 2 threes. So for the 2, he would move and turn. So they will always move closer to our enemy tank. And let's see here. This is impassable terrain for our tanks, so the closest way to get to us would be in this way. But actually, they will always move forward. So his move, see here, he rolled 2, so he will move like that. Always move forward. And that's his 2, and then he rolled a 3, which is fire or move, but he cannot fire, of course. So he will move, because line of sight is blocked currently by, I believe it's blocked, or maybe he could fire. I kind of need something straight to see the firing angle here. I believe actually he can fire, so let's go ahead and pretend that he would fire, and let's do it all again to see how it works. So firing is again hexes away and the size. So our size is 4. And then it's 5, 6, 7, 8 hex with the hexes away. So now we need an 8. But then we have 2, 3 lines, so it becomes a 10. And then we have smoke and hold down, so it becomes a 13. So it would be impossible for him to hit me. So then we have a 3, and again it's fire or move. So we remove it because he can't fire. And then we have a 4, which is move. So he moves 1 hex in the whatever he's facing. And that's the end of that. Now we have finished the German tank operations. We move to the last step now, which is end of turn events. You simply roll 2d6 and you consult the chart. We roll a 6. 5 to 6 is German infantry. Roll a d6, place on matching red number hex with no Sherman or infantry already on it. No re-roll. So we go ahead and roll. And we roll a 4, which means we have a spawn here of infantry. Again, use cubes, anything you want. And these guys will not automatically attack during the German tank operations. They will attack, or they can attack, either as snipers or with Panzerfausts in the end of turn events. So that is the end. That is the end of the first turn, and unfortunately we died. But if we would play on, again, first step, remove Sherman smoke. We position our commander's spot marker where we want it, if we want to be popped hatch or buttoned up. Sometimes it can be advantageous to be buttoned up. And then after that, we would again go to our order phase. But we're not going to do that now because we are dead. And this is just a preview video. Anyway, I hope I gave you a better idea of how Lone Sherman works. And again, I have to say, this is a very, very enjoyable game. I think Mike has done a tremendous job with the rules. Again, I'm not used to actually reading 23 pages of rules and actually, okay, so I get it. Because usually if it's 23 pages of rules or longer, I need to read it a few times and then I need to reread specific sections to actually understand it. But nope, that is not the case here. And even though this might seem intimidating, once you get going, it actually makes a lot of sense. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I will provide you with a link in the video description to Mike's own YouTube channel and where you can buy this game. You can buy this game off Amazon. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I hope you would like to get subscribed. Also, commenting and liking the video really does help me out a lot. So if you have the time to do that, please go ahead. Okay guys, I will see you next time.